Hello, welcome back to All for United WFC. Apologies for that, a little bit later than usual. And I held the live button for a little bit then because we were laughing about something backstage and I could see Barry laughing across the bottom and I couldn't click go live because I couldn't stop laughing myself. So that was a bit of a nightmare. As you can see, for the first time ever, we've decided to get one of our favourite opposition fans to join us. So Rob is here to offer a little bit of balance to what I'm sure is going to be a big discussion point, which is obviously where we'll start. Obviously, with the penalty shouts and things like that. But obviously, we're going to talk about the game, some of the things that Skinner has said. Obviously, that's in the YouTube title about where United the better side and all those kinds of things as well. I'll start with the penalties then. We don't usually do this. The reason I'm going to start with these is because this is the hottest topic, it seems. Everyone seems to be talking about this. And Rob, I'm going to come to you first because I think you're going to... In fact, I think we're all in agreement, actually, for the first one. We'll start with the Paris one first. You said on the combined 11, you didn't want this game to be talking about refereeing decisions. You wanted it talking about the game. Well, here we are. First 2 minutes, we're talking about refereeing decisions that impacted the game. So that first one, from a Chelsea point of view, what do you reckon? Penalty on Paris? Or
I will say I've seen them given. I will say I understand why the referee doesn't give it because the referee's positioning is awful. However, there's a lines person. The lines person has the authority to give a penalty. If they think it's a penalty, they should be giving it, not just assuming that the referee's going to give it. It's one of those ones I sort of say it's what I call a VAR penalty this year. If it, isn't given on the pitch, I think if there's a break in play immediately, I think VAR has a look at it and maybe gives it. What went against Paris, I think, was her reputation for going down easily. And to be fair, she'd done it several times before that in the game as well. And I think that's why, that went against her. I think it had been at the other end and it had been on a Chelsea player, I'd have been frustrated to not get it in live time. But on reflection, probably would have agreed with the referee's call.
I think that's probably a fair way to look at it. And I did agree with somebody earlier that I think Paris's history has probably gone against her a little bit here, albeit that shouldn't make a difference because a foul is a foul. But Charlie, obviously, you were at the game. I'm assuming you thought at the same time, obviously, it was a penalty. You were obviously the other side of the ground, so a bit more of a limited view. But when you've watched it back, what are you saying on that first one?
No, we saw the contact from the opposite corner of the pitch. I think what makes it more annoying, it's frustrating. What makes it more is Buchanan got away with that against Arsenal as well, literally the week before. Same thing, caught out by a quicker player and just clipped their heels and took them down. So it's definitely a penalty. I don't understand how it's not. And I think if there's been a decision made because Paris is known to go down softly, then that shows a bias that shouldn't be there. And if the lines person has seen it, well, we know women's football, the lines people make no decisions at all, ever. Yeah. So they don't even they literally make no decisions. I don't know why they're there. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, well, United didn't create anything apart from that. That's irrelevant. In my head, Chelsea could have had 50 shots on goal. And if they'd not scored from them, that's their issue because they've not scored. We should have had a penalty. And if you have loads of shots and don't score, that's in your control. You've not been clinical enough. But we've had a good opportunity to take potentially a point, and it's been a poor decision, which is out of our control. And that's what really annoys me, coupled with the fact that we also had a lot of the ball but didn't do much with it. So just those two things combined really frustrates me.
Just on the lines person, I will say there was one absolutely comical moment in the first half that sort of summed it up, where a throw-in was given. I think it was Jessie Fleming had the ball and Honor kicked it out of play. And Honor knew she'd kicked it out of play. And the throw-in went to United. And Honor turned to the lines person and says, "Are you sure?" And it's kind of worrying when the players themselves, know that referees have got the decision wrong. And, Honor, to be fair, she didn't take a quick throw because she even herself looked baffled by it. And the referee was looking to the lines person. Obviously, she had no clue what she was going to give. And as a result of that, that sort of summed it up for me. I thought the officials at that game were some of the, most inconsistent. I know we talk about it every single week in the WSL, but it is increasingly becoming one of those things where it's just farcical. The lines people just, they may as well just sit in the stand because they do nothing. They do nothing. They can't get the offsides right. And yeah, they may as well just sit in the stand.
I also think the lines people, I think in the women's game, you're not always, but regularly, you're closer to the crowd, aren't you? So they're really close. And I think they're really easily shaken by that. So obviously, we all thought Kerr's goal was offside, and obviously looking back, it wasn't. But our reaction to that, the lineswoman couldn't cope with that at all. She spent the next 10 minutes constantly turning around, looking at us to see if we were doing anything. It just shows they're not up to it from a technical point of view, from a mental point of view. It's just. And that's Rob's right. This game shouldn't have been about that. If it had just been decided by a Kerr wonder goal, which is what it was really, that's fine. But I will always feel about this game that we've had an opportunity taken away from us for a moment that was out of our control. And again, it doesn't matter how few other chances we had. That was a decision that had an impact on the game in a way that it shouldn't have had an impact on the game.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, are you pretty much in agreement with this? Because maybe, as just Rob and Charlie have both said, the ref might not have seen it, but there's a lines person on that side that's got a better view maybe than the ref has. I mean, it's just, for me, I know we're going to talk about the second one as well, but that first one, to me, I don't understand. I mean, Buchanan's always running a risk anyway, running behind a player like that who's running into the box. I just, well, yeah, baffled personally, but...
No, I don't agree with that because Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, and indeed the Queen all saw that was a penalty. And I think we really do need to just take a moment here to just recognise that was a disgraceful decision. For context, I was stood in the middle of a cafe watching this, getting ready for the Stevenage game to kick off and for the players to get out. And I was quite happy up there with bacon cheeseburger, all was well, everything was great. Watching it there on the TV, and I'm just waiting. Where it's got a point. It's easy. It's the easiest decision you're going to make. It's even easier than deciding whether or not you're going to try and get a car and park at Kingsmeadow, or if you're just going to hoof it from Manchester, because ultimately it's probably easier. All of those decisions, simple. There's not a world, not a planet that exists where that's not a penalty. The Chelsea player whose name I forget, Buchanan, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, she comes across and listen, did she mean to do it? Probably not. But does she impede Nikita Paris from running forward and having an opportunity to get the ball and cross it in? Yes, she does. Does it stop her from running? Yes, it does. Does it knock her off balance? Yes, it does. Is it a foul? Yes, it is. Will it be given anywhere else on the pitch? Of course it bloody will. So it's a penalty. It's that simple. Give the penalties. Don't make stupid decisions. I couldn't even swear. I don't swear on here, and I couldn't swear there because there were 3 kids sat in front of me. I had to walk outside and mutter under my breath like some sort of psychopath. It was horrific, Connor. Horrific. Should have been given.
Can I ask something of Rob as
before you came on, really?
Sorry. Can I ask something? I don't know what Rob thinks as well, and the rest of you. Outside of that decision, I often feel like with the referees, they would rather, by not making the big decisions, they have a massive impact. And that's not just penalties, that's like reckless challenges. Rob, we've talked about that. That's professional fouls, that's subs up challenges. They don't want to make decisions, and by making the decision not to make a decision, they massively impact the outcome of games. Is what I say. For every team, not just us. This isn't about just us. This is all the time.
Yeah, again, you saw a prime example of it last week in the Conti Cup after they gave the penalty in the Conti Cup, which I thought was a penalty. I did think, I thought McCabe was tripped. But you could see the referee, after they gave it, they were unsure and they were talking to the lines person. And clearly between them, they weren't sure. And for the rest of the game, they didn't give anything. And there was some absolutely awful challenges going in. I mean, McCabe should have saw red for the assault on Berger. Buchanan, I don't know how she missed that penalty on Caitlin Ford. Lauren James was fouled and it was a penalty. And all of these weren't given. And that's what really concerns me is the referees, by abandoning the duty of doing it, a player is going to get seriously injured at some point by the referees not giving decisions. I mean, you nearly saw it. And again, I sort of said this to Connor. I think Galton was very, very lucky yesterday with that 2-footed tackle that she did it on Sophie Ingle. And Sophie Ingle, A, it didn't properly connect, and B, it was Sophie Ingle and she just gets up and gets on with it. If it had properly connected, or if it had been on certain other players in the squad that do have a bit of a perchance for going down and rolling around a bit,
Mm.
she would have been in serious trouble because it was very wild and reckless. That said, I still don't have any faith the referee would have even given it if there had been contact because of the way refereeing in the WSL works. And I said this about the men's refereeing earlier on a space, and that's what really concerns me. We've got a quality product now that is being damaged by subpar officiating, and that's not necessarily always the official's fault. I feel sorry for them not being full-time. I feel sorry for them not having the right level of, support and training needed. In general, I think it's so poor.
But the thing that sucks about that is you're saying that they haven't got the training, but we're talking about what is now fast becoming an elite league. It's spoken about in the right sort of breaths as being, as it is, the top league for women's football. So you've got to have the top officials. It's an absolute embarrassment. And that's exactly what Skinner said as he sat down. One of the joys of being a little bit mutton is that when you're watching the old telly, you can see some of this lip reading. I don't need people to come and tell what's been said. And that's exactly what you said. It's embarrassing. And it is embarrassing because it couldn't have been clearer. You called it, and I was so certain. I knew it was going to be an absolute penalty because you can tell by the way people fall, all of these sorts of things. And for her, absolutely, she was taken out and down she went. And it was
all I will say,
it wasn't like she was 9.4.
I don't remember as much being made when Wrighton was taken out by Marla Tissio.
I was just about to say this. I think the reason why in the reverse, I know exactly the tackle you're on about because we all sat on it and said, I got away with it because we all said that it probably was a penalty at the time. I think the reason why that doesn't get brought up is because you won 3-1. And obviously it didn't really have an impact on the game, but it could have. We could have gone on to win that 1-0.
And say that, Connor, you're right. We did. We said that was a bit of a dodgy tackle and could have gone the wrong way. But yeah.
I think that's why this has been made such a big deal is because, as Charlie used, I know we're going to talk about the game and other things that, we could or couldn't have done. But ultimately, we score one of those. There's no guarantee we would have scored. We might have missed, but you're more likely to score from a penalty than you are some of the other chances that we were creating. That changed the outcome again. We get a point. Chelsea don't get 3. The league table looks a whole lot different, and that's why I think this is being made into a topic. Is because it is frustrating, and United fans, I think, and especially Mark Skinner, albeit there's a lot of criticism of him for other things, rightfully, I think, on that. Now, the second penalty shout, this is the one I think that has divided. Weirdly, both. I'm hearing different sides for both penalties. Earlier on, I was speaking to somebody earlier. I will name her, Megan. Obviously, people know her from this channel. Said that Paris died for the first one and thought the second one was blatant. Some people think that the Paris one was and the second one was. I don't know where people stand on the second one.
Whoa. You say somebody said to you that Paris dived for the first one? Well, you just said.
Yeah.
I demand that you give me this person's information because I want to send them the video that clearly proves that they're chatting out of their orifice that they use for a number 2.
I apologise, Megan, if you're watching this.
Leave Meg alone.
Yeah, she's all right. She's a good one, Meg. But the second one...
Garber,
yes.
I've got her. Right. That's what I'm going to be for the next 2 minutes.
Oh, Christ.
Oh, God. I do apologise, Meg, for that one. But the second one, obviously, Carter on honour. Now, this one has caused, obviously, a little bit of debate in one of our group chats. But, Rob, from a Chelsea point of view, I think me and you were chatting before this one, is a little bit different into what it is, completely different in terms of it's not even on the ground. Both players are in the air. From a United point of view, United fans would argue Carter didn't even jump for the ball. She's gone straight into the back of honour and doesn't touch the ball. So, therefore, penalty, no?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's one of the ones where I think it's one of those, if it's anywhere else on the pitch, in the centre of the midfield, and I hate using this phrase, it's given as a free kick. But I've seen, Sam Kerr get this treatment week in, week out from centre-backs. It does just seem that defenders, and rightly or wrongly, have a different set of code and ethics they can get away with. I remember, Vidic and John Terry used to be 2 of the masters at this. The sly little jump into the back of the centre forward or into, the winger after it's gone just to unsettle them. I personally think it's one of those ones, again, as someone says, it could be seriously injured if they fell awkwardly. It's one of those ones that, again, I've seen them given, but I think if you see them, if you give one, you then got to give them every single time. And I think because it happens so often on the pitch, referees are afraid to do it. And that's the big thing. I think definitely, yeah. So yeah, again, Harry Kane does it weekly, and they get lauded for good centre forward play and stuff. It's odd because it definitely is a foul anywhere else on the pitch, but in the penalty box, bizarrely, you don't see penalties given for that. And I've seen it various times done against Guro Wright, and it was done against Lauren James in, I can't remember, I want to say it was the home match against Aston Villa, and players just assume you can get away with it. And yeah, someone says a penalty is a penalty, full stop. I don't disagree, but my thing is that if you're going to give one of them, you have to give them all, and referees aren't going to do that because they're too naive and they're too scared to make a big decision. Someone raised a really good point earlier in the chat that I want to make, is that in that Chelsea versus Arsenal game that's being billed as a title decider at Christmas, there was the penalty given in that game that was clearly outside of the box. I think they were concerned about giving another decision and having a similar situation like that, where that genuinely, was just a completely farcical decision. And I think they were concerned about being on the front pages like that referee was.
I mean, Charlie, I tend to agree with that. I mean, I think, I can't remember which one of you made the point by not making a decision. We're talking about it more because they've not made it. But that second one, you mentioned in one of our group chats about talking about, rugby. If that's in rugby, it's a red card because you can't tackle in the air. Obviously, this is slightly different in terms of a different sport. But, as Rob said there, and I think I said to you at the time, that, this happens all over the pitch and fouls are sometimes given, sometimes not. It depends, to be honest, how much. And I will say this from a United point of view, Charlie, I don't know whether you agree or not. The reason why I'm swaying more towards this one could be debated a bit more is because Honor didn't complain. And now usually when a player goes down like that, they're like, oh, come on, and making a big deal out of it. Honor and a couple of the players around didn't say anything. Whereas for the first one, Paris makes a big deal about it, and so did some of the others. So what did you make on the second penalty shout that we should have had?
I think it was instinctively, I think it's a penalty. Now, there might be a bit of team bias there. I think there always is, isn't there? I think it's reckless and it's dangerous for the opposition. But I think Rob's right when he says if a goal, how many times we see goalkeepers jumping like that and nothing's given. It's just, I think they're never going to do it. They need to look at officiating in football and literally go back to the basics of how they do it. So take things like intent out of it. Intent's irrelevant. You literally can never know what someone's intention is ever unless you're the actual person. And then it's no longer subjective. So is it a foul? Is it foul play? Yes. Is it reckless? Does it endanger the opposition? Yes. And then you can mitigate down. So was the surface slippy? Were they both running at speed? Was the player already going down? At the moment, it just seems to be whatever the referee fancies. And the fact that we've just said she didn't make a fuss, and the same with Sophie Ingle with the Galton one, she didn't make a fuss, so the referee's not going to give it. That is mental to me. Yeah, that is absolutely insane, because what you're then encouraging is for players to make a fuss. And as more money becomes involved, and as the amount of jeopardy in games increases, and there was a lot of jeopardy in this game for us, players will just start doing that. Okay, if you're saying I need to roll around on the floor and pretend I'm injured, I'll do that then, because that's the difference between Champions League and not. Because we've had such a good season. Actually, if we got to the end of the season and the only 2 games we'd lost were against Chelsea, that's flipping brilliant. That's brilliant for everyone, for anyone else, because Chelsea beats everyone, and then it's what happens underneath that's the big deal. So if we don't get Champions League based on 1 point, it comes down to moments like this.
I mean, yeah.
That's what I think.
No, it's hard to disagree. I mean, Barry, for yourself, this is the one against Skinner. Well, obviously you mentioned both of them in his presser. Rightly annoyed again. This one caused a lot of reaction online. Watching obviously on Sky Sports yesterday said that both were. Are you saying that this one is as well?
I would actually say it's not a penalty because the first one should have been given, and therefore this would never have happened because the entire game would change. Dynamics work. So it's not a penalty because it never should have got that far. Listen, I'll put it down to you again. I know that Rob agrees with me when I say this. A foul is a foul no matter where it is on the pitch.
Oh yeah,
There is
100%.
nothing in the rules that states if it happens in the box, it has to be 10 times worse, or, there's got to be a little bit of extra going on. A foul is a foul. And that is a foul. And I gave you the evidence for this, Connor. I was gobsmacked by your behaviour last night, if I'm honest with you. And I'm still a little bit tetchy over it now. But to the point, I found it. I put it on WhatsApp. I've sent it through to him. I've given him the stills of the 3 moments. I kind of wish he had them now so he could put them on here so I could talk you through them. Gary Neville-esque. But I'll give you the Barry Rust version of how that's a foul. It's not a foul if they are both jumping together in a proper 50-50 tussle for the ball. If that happens, no problem. Honor is off the floor way before the opposition players at Carter.
Yeah.
Opposition player Carter, she doesn't even come close to jumping. At the point where she finally does, she's not even trying to head the ball. She literally does what can only be described as some sort of Patrick Swayze dirty dancing type move where she turns halfway in the air. And I think she was expecting to lift Honor sort of above her hand in some sort of special moment that we could all sit and celebrate. But instead, she forgot to catch her because she's gone straight through her, knocked her on her backside. We're lucky that on a Battier or Baye or whatever we're calling her nowadays,
On your buyer.
commentator gets it right. No matter what goes on, that is a penalty. It's a penalty, Connor, and it's a penalty because you can't run through a player, especially when they're in the air. If you're going for the ball, properly going for the ball, no problems with that. But when you watch that properly, it's literally, you can see Honor's going for the ball. She's going to win it. If she just stands her ground, great. She does a little, it's a token jump, Connor. It's the sort of jump that I do now at the age of 40 years and a little bit fat. So, sort of just about off the air, right? It wasn't a jump. It was a blatant foul. And one of those 2 penalties, at least, should have been given. And it's just a disgrace, Connor, because everything that happened, it might not have even ended. We could have had both of those penalties and scored neither. So there's no guarantees we'd have won. The disappointment is that
We probably would have missed both based on current performance at penalties.
Right? I just think it's really depressing that we're almost 23 minutes into it. And again, we're talking about something that an official has done that spoilt the game. If Chelsea had gone on to win that 1-0 and there was no arguments for a penalty, we'd just have to sit there and go, oh, well, hasn't quite worked out. But we shouldn't be sitting here being hamstrung by the officials. It's hard enough to beat Chelsea when they've got 11 players, let alone when they've got 14.
I will quite happily say I don't think at any point in that game did the referee. I think it was more of a case of 11 versus 3. Was probably.
I think sometimes when they do the training, you have like a player in a pink bib who gets to play for both teams. You'd like to think she was that, but she just forgot and kept playing for you.
There was one offside in the second half again. This is my old fault referees where Canner had literally came back for an offside and then literally ran from in front past 2 players to go onto the ball and was flagged offside. And she turned around and asked him, "Do you know the offside law?" And again, it was Blundell. Even she looked confused. She thought she'd been, penalised for a foul. And, all the players know they're not. So this is what does frustrate me is that players, nowadays do know better than that. I think so. That's a really interesting point on mentality. I think that's a good.
Yeah, it's something we're definitely get to now that we talk about the game. I mean, like I said, I think both are good shouts for penalties, as Barry, as you said. If the first one gets given, that second one doesn't happen because I think I said to somebody at the time that those 10 minutes, the ref for me just completely lost the game because there was the tackle that I think it was who got booked for the tackle on Ladd. I can't remember who it was now. It went clattered into Ladd. Then the Galton thing happened like 10 seconds later.
I think it was Manly Leopold.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Got booked for that. And then the Galton tackle, which I said, to be honest, I think she's lucky if that connects. She's off for that because she got slightly nudged, but she's jumping 2 foot in the air into somebody above ankle height. And then obviously the 2 penalties. So I think overall, obviously we're going to be biased on here, but there's no agenda against United. The officiating
that could have been a red. It could have been a red had she connected. You've only got to go into the men's games to see how even that doesn't get applied consistently as to what the rule is. They just make life so difficult for themselves rather than just accepting what a foul is. Like with handball, handball's handball. If it hits your hand, it's handball. Just if you're going to do it, can't judge intent, as they've just said. You're not going to judge the intent of a player going into a tackle, so you can't judge the intent of Leah Galton. When you freeze frame it, you could replace her exactly with Eric Cantona at Selhurst Park, and they've got the exact same legs and everything. So it works. You can do that. But was it the same? Was she trying to fly at some geezer's face who was being a little bit mouthy? No, he wasn't. Or she wasn't, rather. So, you can't judge the intent. It would have been, had she connected, 100%. It could have been a red card because she was out of control trying to jump over one of the other players' legs. It wasn't ideal. But this is the situation the game had got into. It was het up, and the players wanted to get the ball and get it forward and get a goal. So it's really tricky. And I feel like I've got to diffuse this because I can feel myself getting riled. Can we just double check? Because Shane's put this. You've seen Dirty Dancing, right?
I know of it. I've not seen it. I do apologise if anyone new is watching the channel. Well, at least I've heard of it. But no. Fair enough. Well, that's brought a bit of light-hearted. But let's get to
got a chance there.
Let's talk to the other things in the game. We're going to get to mentality and about all this better side stuff, but just briefly, she's on the thumbnail, unfortunately, because there wasn't actually that many great pictures we could choose from the game for the thumbnail. So we're going to have to talk about the Sam Kerr goal. Rob, should I start with you just to depress us even more?
I'll go around a poll because I sent this to Connie yesterday. Charlie, who do you hate more, Sam Kerr or Fernando Torres?
Oh, well, Sam Kerr's a red, really. I did try to start that chant, but it didn't gain much traction. Fernando Torres.
Okay. Barry, Torres or Kerr?
100% Torres. I quite like Sam Kerr.
Torres or Kerr? I noticed you sidestepped the question yesterday.
Yeah, Torres purely because, Liverpool. But
purely for the Liverpool links, yeah.
Yeah, but Sam Kerr just annoyed because it's always against United. And I think I put up a tweet, big game players. She's clearly one of them. She scored
it's not always against United, though, is it? Because she scored 22 goals this season and they weren't all against us.
But again, Sam Kerr, what makes the best strikers special, and she's one of them, men's football, women's football, whatever it might be, is they assume or anticipate there could be a mistake or something that could happen. And that's what she did for that goal. We were trying to play the high line, and 3 of our defenders were playing that really well yesterday. And unfortunately, one wasn't, which meant that Sam Kerr made the run anticipating that it might not be held. And she was absolutely right. And there were a couple of times before then when Maya Letizia had to work really hard to track back, to cover and win the ball back. Mary Oates had to make a brilliant save on the 12th minute because the same thing was happening. So Sam Kerr clearly thought that there's gaps. This high line that they're holding, there's room for manoeuvre here because 1 or 2 of them aren't holding the line or are panicking. And she just anticipated that would happen, and she made a really good run. And unfortunately, that time, there wasn't time for Maya Letizia to get back and intercept it, as she had been doing up until that point. And that's why she's a great striker, because she anticipates these things are going to happen and she's ready for them to happen.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think from the other thing that I think is the sign of a great striker is that some players, and again, I call it Morata syndrome. Morata, when he used to miss one chance, would just disappear for the rest of the match. But Kurt, she had the first one. I thought she should have buried that first one. That was an easier chance, I thought. Put it, straight low. Second one was a very, very good save. Again, she tried to go and give Earps the eyes. Got no problem. She tried to put it in the right corner, as per se, for the striker. But it was I sort of turned to the person I was with and said, Kerr won't miss 3 things. Won't miss 3 chances in the game. And sure enough, I also said on Thursday, as much as I love Hannah Blundell, there will be one moment in every game where Hannah Blundell will be caught out of position or get too far forward or get sucked in. And against a player like Lauren James, you can't do that because she will punish you. It'd be really fascinating in the longer term to see what position Lauren James ends up playing, because her shooting's obnoxiously good. Her dribbling's really good. She's learned to pass the ball this season. It's becoming one of those players that can sort of do everything. And, it was an inch-perfect ball. I thought Kerr took it down. Bizarrely, and I'd said this, before air, there were some United fans blaming Mary Earps for it. and saying she should have been coming out to claim it. And I'm sorry, that's ludicrous. It's stupid, because all it would have ended up doing, I guarantee, if she'd come out, she'd have clattered into Sam Kerr, given a penalty, and everyone would be saying, why is she coming off her line?
No, she wouldn't have given a penalty, because the ref would have gone, oh no, that's okay, because that's how she rolled.
Well, no, so this was in Chelsea. This was in Chelsea's favour, so it would have been given.
12 against 11.
But no, yeah. I mean, it was a very good finish. Yeah. I mean, I think again, I sort of felt this from that point. Chelsea never really had to get out of sort of second or third gear and go up to fourth and fifth gear yesterday, because they just felt like they just had a measure of you at all points. In all honesty.
I think that's the thing. I mean, Charlie, on the goal itself, I kind of tie this into the whole high line question. It's not like that was the first chance of that. As Rob said, Kerr had a couple of opportunities before that, had a couple of opportunities after that. Yeah. I think Sang put the question in earlier, how many times we conceded a route one to Chelsea. I can think of, especially with Harder, I can think of 2 or 3, 4 goals off, just off the top of my head. That's how Chelsea seemed to score against us.
That's clearly the tactic that we were going for. So for goodness sake, be brave and hold it. Be brave and hold it. And if you're done, you're done. But what I hate is clearly the tactic is to play the higher line, and then players panic and don't do it. Hold the line, is what I would say. But we didn't. And again, Rob was saying, Chelsea didn't have to. It was really interesting. Within the first 3 or 4 minutes, I think I turned to Shane and I said, they've got no interest in pressing us here. They were quite happy for us to have the ball. And I think stats-wise, we're now probably one of the best teams at playing out of the press. There's no need for Chelsea to get us into that position where we were doing that, because we do that quite well. So they were really happy for us to have the ball, and we just did very little with it when we got it, and they did more with it when they had it. And I think Rob's right. Sam Kerr had a really good chance early on. Mary Earps stood her ground and made a really good point-blank save. But yeah, just hold the line. And again, I suppose if you hold the line and then it marginally she makes it through, you then criticise for that as well. We shouldn't be holding a high line. But that's what we were planning to do, and it wasn't executed well enough. But then I kind of agree with what you said to me, is it wasn't working. They weren't holding it well enough. So something needed to happen. Something needed to change, because that ball was just then on all of the time.
I think, Barry, throwing that same thing up to you, that's my criticism for it. Because, I mean, this is on the manager and the players, because somebody at that point, leaders on the pitch go, right, this ball over the top is in every single time. You've got one of the best players in the world in Sam Kerr that can constantly run on the end of it. Somebody just turn around to the defender and go, right, we're not holding it. Let's drop 10 yards. Let's all just drop back a bit, because then that ball is then not on. I mean, Barry, what do you put that goal down to? Because, clearly, obviously, the high line was a little bit, it was at fault for that one. But, as I put on my tweet, sometimes, brilliance in a goal, you've just got to admire, the pass and the finish. But where do you kind of stand on the goal and the kind of whole discussion?
I think on this one, the problem was that we couldn't play Kirsty Hansen because she's on loan to Aston Villa. I think the mistake that Mark Skinner made was that Martha Thomas should have played. Because if Martha Thomas had played, she would have channeled her in a Braveheart. And then you could just imagine, and again, I'm sorry, everyone else is going to get this, Connor, but you won't. Martha Thomas could have been stood in the corner shouting out, hold. And if she'd been doing that, they'd have got the line spot on and perfect. But unfortunately, because we did not have any Braveheart-style players, we weren't able to do that. It's always one of those disappointing ones. I mean, I just heard Charlie say there, it's one of those where you try and hold the line, and if you get done, you get done. This is the problem with playing a high line. If you do it, you are absolutely gambling on the fact that you're going to get it spot on and correct. And there's always the chance that it goes wrong. And the problem is that when it goes wrong, you're in a situation where you either got to have the goalie has got to come out quicker if she sees that it's being done, or you're in a situation where the defence have got to be tighter. We were in neither of those situations, unfortunately. So it was one of those where it never should have happened because it was such an easy goal. Literally, it was on a plate for them. But I think it's harsh to be too critical by saying it needed to change because they scored one goal. You say they got through a couple of times, but they got through once and scored. It's not like they got through 5 times, scored 4, and we're all sitting there going, it's bloody Chelsea again. The answer to that was bloody Sam Kerr. She didn't even look at the goal. I don't know how she does it. Like, you take us to Kingsmeadow last year, she did exactly the same thing. Just turns around, has a look, shoots from about 35 yards out over Mary Earps. It's like it's got, I reckon that what's happened is the balls in Kingsmeadow have got like these magnet type things in, and it's got like a tiny little person in it just driving it, going, where we got to go, quick, down. And there's got to be some sort of witchcraft and wizardry happening.
Can I say one genuine thing with it? She has said before when she's like in a like interview and stuff that when she does like volleys and stuff in training, she will almost always do them starting with her back facing away from goal and try and score from her back facing away from goal, because in her sort of logic of it is, if I can do it from there without being able to see the target and hit the target and score, then once I've got the goal in front of me, it's even easier.
So there you go. There's your difference between the champions of England and the wannabe champions of England. The champions of England are practicing with their back to goal and, doing witchcraft and wizardry. And we're practicing being able to stand in a straight line as if we're still in primary school year 3.
You really didn't like the high line.
I don't mind it. Again, I think somebody made the point earlier. I mean, this isn't something I wanted to mention anyway about the high line. That's the problem. You can play a high line if your forwards and midfield are pressing. We didn't. We played a high line, but nobody pressed. So we kind of had a midfield and forward line that wasn't really connected, and a high line defense, but no one was really holding it. So it was just a bit of a mess. And that's why I said somebody at that point go, no, this isn't working. Even if it's against the manager, just say, no, we're going to drop back for 5-10 minutes. Just take the pressure out of of that ball over the top, because we had no issue keeping the ball. That was never the problem.
But this is it. We've outdone Chelsea in literally every. Crikey, is that Spider? We had outdone Chelsea in every single statistic that is possible to really outdo them on, with the exception of the scoreline. That's it. So, I mean, the alarm bells were ringing before the goal. You call them alarm bells. They hadn't scored. Yes, it was a bit of a worry. Yes, there's the potential they could have dropped back. I'm not arguing that could have, that shouldn't have been something they did. But what I'm arguing is that Chelsea did not really threaten us that much. They had 3 shots on goal. They had the same amount of shots on goal as we did, on target. So I don't think we need to be sitting here, getting ourselves to upset. Big teams are going to make chances against you. If you were sitting there hoping that we were going to sit there and nullify the champions of England without them having a shot on target or having a sniff, I don't know absolutely what planet we're coming from. You don't do that. Big teams always get chances. And the fact we've limited them to 3, and one of them being a clear-cut chance, which incidentally I don't think is the one they scored from, I think you have to sit there and take that. For me, and I know I said this to you yesterday, Connor, and I think it made you explode, but that to me is our best performance against Chelsea. Not because we were necessarily doing great guns going forward. We didn't have what we needed to there. But in terms of how we dictated the play, people might say that Chelsea were happy for us to have the ball and they were happy for us to do these things. I've got no problem with that. The fact is we did it. We kept them away at bay for the vast majority of the game. We did have opportunities. You can talk about the penalties again, but they were, again, opportunities where who knows what would have happened if the foul hadn't even been committed, if the ball had come across a box. So, I'm not actually too upset about it all. And that's why I was more frustrated about the penalties, because I'd have much rather we lost 1-0 and it was just down to our performance. But other than that, I think the performance has been okay. I don't feel like it's anything to cry over. If we do this again next week, then it's an issue. But again, our performances this season don't warrant a massive overreaction.
It doesn't. I agree with everything. I agree with your last point in terms of.
No, you agree with everything, Connor.
No, Charlie's kind of in and out here. I think she is coming back in. There we go. But no, I don't think it was our best performance first. The reason why I say that is because if you're going to say that, then if anyone remembers the Louis van Gaal era under United, you'd be saying that we outplayed every single team. We didn't. Just because you have the ball, you're not outplaying the opposition. As somebody made the point earlier, Chelsea keeper, I don't remember him making a save. Apart from Zellam's free kick that was catch in practice, apart from a Russo half turn that went straight down, I genuinely cannot remember a single chance. So that's why I don't think it was the best. Because it's very easy to
And how
pass
many
along
saves do you
midfield.
remember Marriott was making then, apart from the
More than the Chelsea keeper had to make.
How many? 1 more? 2 more? 7 more?
It's still more than the Chelsea keeper had to make.
Oh,
Therefore,
don't start
I
doing me that when you're talking about 1.
To be fair, I will say with that there were also the Lauren James, the Kerr effort in the second half, and the Leopold's effort in the second half that were like efforts I expect Chelsea to get on target. They were poor misses from us. And that's what I would say in sort of favour of Connor's argument here. I can't think of many situations United had where you look at it and say, yeah, that's a really poor, miss or gilt-edged chance that they didn't put wide. There just wasn't any gilt-edged chances.
What I think Mark Skinner did well on this occasion was that he knew that if we just went and did what we did to you last year, there's every chance you're going to come back at us and take advantage of those holes that are being made by us being too aggressive. We tried to be aggressive last year. It worked for a half. And then when we tried to do it in the second half, he just ripped us to pieces. I think the situation we're in this year is that we knew we couldn't go gung-ho. We tried even doing it at LSB. That wasn't working too well. It was our own mistakes that caused us problems. I think he just wanted a calm, controlled performance because, like you said, we need to get this monkey off our back where we don't get points against Chelsea. And this was a chance to do it. Even if it were a draw, we'd have come away from that feeling, this is progress. This is something good. We've lost 1-0. The last time we lost by 1 goal was a couple of years ago when we lost 2-1. Our previous results have been 3-1, 4-2, 3-1, 6-1. That's been our last 4 games. So, please don't come here and sit at me and try and say that a 1-0 loss in the manner that we did wasn't the right thing to try and do against the Chelsea side that ultimately have got us on toast every single time.
I agree to go on, because I know, Charlie, you want to come in, but I also want to throw this at you, Charlie, as well, from off the back of what Barry is saying. But there's something I was going to mention as well. Chelsea had 4 key players missed. Those 4 players there, at least 2 or 3 of them start. So that's 2 or 3 out right from the off. So that's why, again, from my argument, I don't think it was our best because Chelsea are missing. That's like us missing obviously we missed in the first one.
It's right. Just based on that, let's not pretend it's some sort of miracle that Chelsea went on to win that game because they didn't have whoever they didn't have, and they had the captain of Canada instead. They didn't have Pernille Harder. They had Lauren James. Let's not pretend that this is some sort of really bedraggled Chelsea side where they're playing academy players. Is what I'll say on that. What I will say is, going back to the performance, Chelsea were quite happy for us to have the ball, and because they know how ruthless they are when they get their chances. And we were unable, I think Rob is right, to create any real clear-cut chances. So I think that is a point of discussion that needs to be made, is the lack of creativity in midfield, the lack of movement, the lack of ideas. That needs to be discussed. The other thing, and this will get Rob excited, is we probably need to discuss Millie Bright. Now, 2 things. 1, I would have hated Millie Bright at school because she's always kicking the football over the bloody fence. Stop doing it. That's the first thing. I wouldn't have let her play anymore after the 4th one went over. But she also neutralised completely Russo. Completely. And we kept just trying to hit the long ball over the top. And Millie Bright is going to win that battle every single time. And that is what happened. So we had lots more of the ball. It was a calmer performance. We weren't turned over. But we were still clearly lacking in certain areas. That meant even though we had lots of the ball, we weren't creating opportunities apart from the penalties that we should have had. And I'll never, ever get over that. I'll die by that, literally. But outside of that, we did create very little. And there didn't seem to be much else that we could have done. Oh, yeah. Unreal. But she was like, I would turn to a couple of people next to me. I was like, she is just a class above Millie Bright as a centre back.
My unpopular opinion is that the only reason Millie Bright doesn't get as much recognition as she should is because she doesn't happen to wear the England captain's armband. She is a better defender than Leah Williamson. Leah Williamson is a better passer of the ball. She's a better progressive footballer. But Millie Bright carries that defence. She carries our defence. There's a reason why last year when Magda Eriksson was out, we were fine. But when Millie Bright was out, we lost matches. Yeah, I think that's also very, very true. But no, I think,
every time he did that. Every time.
I'm sure probably internally, probably there's a. It was one of the most I've ever seen in a game from Bright. The only time I remember similar amounts of it being out. Was one of the Champions League games I think it was the Champions League game a few years ago against Bayern when we'd gone 3-2 up, and then we were up on aggregate, and everything was just getting walloped out of the pitch. But yeah, no, I think that Bright yesterday taught Russo a bit of a lesson in regards to sort of just having that nous and that experience over her. And I think that's the one area I think Alessia Russo can improve her game, is that it just felt like she wasn't up at all for the physical battle yesterday. She wasn't up for Bright in the back of her, just, getting sort of tight, the little interceptions, the early moving in, the little shove, the physical sort of, battle. She just didn't look up for it.
Do you know what helped a little bit? And everyone's been laughing at me. It's not an agenda. But honestly, when Rachel Williams came on, I'm not even joking, the first 2 things she did was win 2 corners. And she just fought for the ball. And she was more physical. And that helped Russo a little bit, I think. But it just wasn't working. Russo was like, she had Millie Bright on her, who on her own that's enough, isn't it? Without having the other 3 defenders also just sitting on top of you. Because there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough happening. And to be honest, I don't know what the answer to that is, because we also know that if you go too attacking against Chelsea, they're just going to pick you off. So it's what would in hindsight it have been. I would rather have seen Garcia on sooner, is what I perhaps would have liked to have seen.
Can I just as a general point? I know you bought Jade Riviere in January, and I know she's a phenomenal young player. Is she fit? And if not, what is she still not fit at this moment in time? I was going to say, if she was fit, I'd have got her on for Blundell, moved on her to left back, and had the 2 of them bombing forward.
When we bought her, I think she was currently out with a hip injury. I think quite a long-term hip injury, I think. But she's back training with the team. I think Skinner said a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, she should be.
With that in mind, with the fact that I know some people have said that Blundell's maybe struggled a bit from a defensive point of view in the next couple of weeks, would you want to alter the defence immediately and bring her in? Or would you want to, see her brought in gently? And as a further caveat to that, do you think that she potentially could do a similar role to what Nim Charles played yesterday if you came up against Chelsea in another competition and say Chelsea had Lauren James and played on the wing specifically to nullify? Because I think that's what Chelsea did so well with Nim Charles and nullified Honor down that side, because of the fact that they just told Charles just to stick to her as much as possible. And even when she wasn't winning the individual sprints, by the time Honor had to sprint 30 yards with Nim Charles, she was tired. And that's understandable. And that's one of the things I think Chelsea did get spot on yesterday, and Emma talked about it in her presser, of neutralising Honor's ability to get down the wing and cross, and also Zellam's ability to control the game and control sort of the passing flow by getting Jessie Fleming just to stick to her.
I think, again, a lot's been said about it, and I know you're not a fan of the stats, Connor, but I just, people are talking as well just about this being a midfield and an attacking battle. And, I get that we have not troubled Chelsea as much as we would have liked to. The quality of their chances may have been better than ours. Charlie's saying that we didn't create any clear-cut chances. She's right. I said that. There was none. But Chelsea only made one clear-cut chance. These are the champions of England we're talking about here. Champions-elect potentially now. And they had one. They had one more shot in total than us. So they had 9, we had 8. We both had 3 on target. We both had 4 off target. So I don't quite know how that works for the one. Obviously, it must have been a blocked one. That's what they usually do.
Is that the weird one that hit the bar? That Chelsea, I can't remember that chance they had where
it was Earps, it was a strange one.
Weird kind of
the one where we thought Nim Charles had done an absolute madness and scored.
It was like a weird kind of cross / turned into shot that hit the.
Well, because again, from in the crowd, we thought it'd gone in, and then I thought it hit the side net, but someone did say it hit the bar, so.
That's the one I can think of, Barry, if you're missing
a shot. Could be. But you've got all of those. We're talking about corners. We had more corners than them, only by 1, granted, but we limited them to 1 corner. We did catch them offside 3 times. So the high line, although not being brilliant, did have some moments. We blocked a couple of their shots. everything was very, very even. You know, goalkeeping, Chelsea had to make 3 saves. We only had to make 2. Obviously, if we'd have made 3 saves, it would have been 0-0. But, you know, such is life. Them's the breaks. You know, and I think it's too easy. It's too easy to come on here and be upset. And I'll tell you why everybody's in the situation they're in, Connor. It's because we know we could have won that game. People are upset not because we've lost to Chelsea, but because this represented the best opportunity that we've had to beat Chelsea since our inception. That's been, without doubt, the best opportunity that we've had. And we're upset because the referee hasn't helped us by doing what they should have done. We're upset because we didn't take the chances. Last year we went there and scored 4. This year we didn't really do enough to even come close to scoring 1, really. I think there was a really nice cross, I think, from Zellerman for a free kick that was soon after the goal that was going towards the far post. And you thought for all the world that Leslie Rousseau was going to rise at the back post like a salmon and do what she always does. And for some reason, she just spunked it down into the ground and didn't quite work. So was it perfect? By no means. By no means. But I don't think Mark Skinner can be got at for trying to try something different. Could he put on different subs? Yes, absolutely. But I've already said I don't entertain those arguments because they're pathetic. You can't win them. They're just opinions. So we can all sit there and have our opinions. Garcia should have been brought on 70 minutes. You know, we should have started somebody else. You'd never be proven right. So, you know, we can sit and enjoy those arguments over a beer as much as you like. It doesn't change the actual facts. And the actual facts are that although we weren't as brilliant going forward as we'd like to be, we tried something different. And, you know, we're saying it's not working, but perhaps that's because we were trying something different. We were trying to play a system and do something that we as a team don't usually do, because normally we are the ones who go and dictate the play and create the chances. So, you know, was it perfect? No. Am I upset? Of course I am, because I felt we could have won it. But am I particularly, you know, and I don't agree with this either. I didn't believe it was season defining because, you know, the irony of this situation is we could have gone on, right, to beat Chelsea and absolutely would have entirely been in our hands, entirely. And you know what would have happened? We'd have gone off and played Aston Villa, drawn against them, and Chelsea win it by a point. So it's not season defining. There's far too many games still to go. Far too many. Was it an important game? Absolutely. Listen, we're sitting there talking about, you said at the very start of the show, Connor, and I somehow, and I hope that Rob appreciates this, I held myself back. You said, well, it's not unusual. Chelsea beat everyone. Well, they don't, because they didn't beat Liverpool at the start of the season, did they? So it's by absolutely no means a given that Chelsea are going to go on and win all of their games. So I just feel like, of course, we're going to be hurt. We've gone away. We've licked our wounds, but it's not season defining. Everything is still to play for. And let's be brutally honest, the only person that's going to be upset if we don't win the title this year is me, because I'm the only one who sat here and said we're going to win the title. Everybody else has been going, we're going to get 3. So you're not going to be delighted.
Can you imagine if last game of the season, all 4 of those teams were on the same number of points? It would be disgusting.
Chelsea are going away to Reading, and that just means they'll roll over for Frank Kirby again. I'm sorry, it happens every time we play Reading. That, you know, basically when we play Reading, it's basically a Fran Kirby testimonial match, especially when it's at Reading. But what I will say, that the result yesterday did open up the very tantalising prospect, and I really hope it comes out like this, is that if Arsenal, say, were to drop points against you, and Chelsea were just to continue winning their matches quietly, then they could get a lovely guard of honour from Jonas Eidevall and his players at Kingsmeadow as champions. And I'm sure we all know the lovely, you know, knowing what a great sport Jonas Eidevall is and what, you know, how well he gets on with Emma Hayes, he'd love to be the person congratulating us for it. I think
there's been so much said in and so much in the comments over the last. However, that would be quite funny though. If United aren't to win it, that would be quite funny, especially with the back and forth with Emma Hayes and Jonas at the moment in their presses, particularly after the Conti Cup final. That would be quite something. But there's a lot of comments about subs and all these kind of things. As Barry said, it's very opinion based because we don't know, because the subs weren't made at the times that people think, and some players didn't come on that people think should. So we don't know if they would have made a difference. My own personal opinion is I think they should have, because we had the ball. So, and I disagree with you, Barry, in terms of, yes, we dominate. Well, factually we did, but I don't think Chelsea had an issue with that. They wanted us to have the ball. They weren't bothered. They weren't pressing us. So it's very easy to pass side to side and backwards when the other team aren't interested in they didn't need to. They were
noticed, though, Connor, that I didn't mention the passing stats. You did. I didn't mention the fact that we had 507 passes to their 293 because I knew it wasn't a relevant statistic.
But you mentioned about being in the game and it only being 1-0. Chelsea didn't need to
Can I
score a second.
can I ask generally, do you have a stat on how many of those passes were progressive passes?
I was trying to find that out while Barry was talking. The stats haven't come out for that yet. So
Well, whilst you're finding that,
unfortunately,
I'll help you out by also saying that, yes, all right, Chelsea may not have had to attack far too much. We'll get another goal. But I disagree. They do need a goal, actually, because our goal difference is still, even after that match, the best. And if Charlie's premonition was to come true, as it stands, we would be the team at the top of that particular foursome.
I mean,
Which we weren't last year, were we, boys and girls? No, we weren't. Come on, stop the pity party. We're second, for God's sake.
well, yes. And as I said to somebody earlier, we're still 10 points better off this than last season. And we've already played Chelsea twice, which we hadn't have done, obviously, by this time last season. I think my frustration comes from the fact that...
We'll do that to you, Connor.
My frustrations come, actually, Barry, listening to you, and I just believed the hype that we were title contenders. And after watching that game, I'm like, well, I don't think we are.
We still are.
No, I don't. We're not.
We still are.
Pop Sarah's comment up. That's just made me go, like, Rob, have a look at that one. Like,
do we want
that is such an interesting thing, isn't it, now? Because if Chelsea beat Arsenal and City, obviously, that helps us so much with Champions League qualification, doesn't it?
Well, that's the thing.
Our annual trip to the CFA, the mini hads, Etihad campus, whatever it is, always ends in a 1-1 draw with Sam Kerr on the score sheet and then Lauren Hemp scoring for them. I spoke to my friends at MCFW Extra yesterday, and we've already agreed on that. So, we've shook hands on the 1-1 in a couple of weeks' time. It's an interesting one. I think a lot of it is still in your own hands. I think you have to just not worry about what Chelsea are going to do, because there's a chance Chelsea can go in both of those and still, and lose both of them. There's a chance, Chelsea, I think if they go to CFA and win, then I think it does become a bit of a title procession for Chelsea, in all honesty, because I don't see them dropping points in many other games. And I feel that, again, it was kind of poetic that Sam Kerr's goal yesterday, a crucial lob in a key match in a game that was expected to be a tight game, comes almost a year to the day to Sam Kerr's lob in a key game against Aston Villa last year, which I think is the moment when the title momentum shifted last year with the nature of that one. It's also the day I bought the seat at Kingsmeadow, but that's a whole other story. But I think, from United's perspective, what they do need to really do is not let this affect them. Like, I think we saw this with Arsenal when they dropped points to Chelsea in January. They then went and dropped silly points in other games, and they obviously lost in the cup, but they dropped, silly points against West Ham and dropped points against City. And this is what I think the lose game at the weekend is the perfect opportunity for United. Bounce back, get some goals on the board. I would expect you to win it, as it's great credit they have to lose and good run they've had in the FA Cup. There does tend to be the golf, and you do tend to see it when teams play championship sides. And ultimately, that probably is the best thing for you to then refocus. What would be really, really interesting is if potentially you did. The progressive passing stat, by the way, is 54%, including forward passes, but just progressive passes is 18%. So it's not particularly high. But what I would say would be disastrous from a United point of view on many levels would be losing the FA Cup title this weekend, because I think then you invite more criticism on the manager. You're obviously out of another cup competition, which raises it. And then suddenly you come into the next game, and it's not you've lost one game and you're bouncing back. It's you've lost a couple of games, and are everyone saying the same things that you said last time about United and that was raised last year.
That's the key. We've got Arsenal, I think, in 3 games' time. I think we've got in the league. I think we've got West Ham, Brighton, then it's Arsenal. That's going to be the one now. If we like as Barry always says in this chat, it's still in our hands. Top 3 is still in our hands. If we lose that game to Arsenal, then we're in a bit of trouble, because then it's now out.
With Sarah just saying what she said there about do we want Chelsea to beat Arsenal and City, I couldn't care less in the grand scheme of things. We don't need to worry about that. We need to worry about our 7 games. We need to worry about going out there now and winning the games that we've got left. If we do that, we beat Arsenal, we beat City, we guarantee the top 3. That's not a problem. And that's exactly what Mark Skinner will say. The minute we saw last year what happens when you start sitting there hoping other teams get results over other people, it just creates a flight of fantasy that's really difficult for you. So we've got to go out there and win those 7 games. It's about us performing in those games. And if we do that, we'll be absolutely fine. I still think that then when we're doing that, if we're winning those games, we beat the likes of Arsenal, we beat the likes of Man City, not only are we continuing the statement sort of run that we've had, then I think what's absolutely beautiful about it will be the fact that we can then afford to sit there and hope that Arsenal and City take points off of Chelsea, because everybody's still looking now and they've lost to Chelsea, and all of a sudden we're going, oh, well, that's it then. We're just going to have to settle for the top three. We don't have to settle for the top three, boys and girls, because we're still in the race. Is it going to be difficult? Of course it's difficult, but it's meant to be difficult. You're trying to win the top league in women's football. You're not trying to win the Smarties.
I mean, Chelsea would just say what you've just said. Chelsea just need to focus on, and they win every game. They're champions now.
Yeah, but Chelsea
we don't even need to win every game now. We can afford to draw one.
But we know that Chelsea aren't going to do that, and we know that because, as Emma Hayes' own words would say, they're just used to winning leagues, so they don't need to be up for this sort of stuff, whereas people like us aren't. So, we are. Do you want Lanzel's question? Because I found it for you.
Yes. It was about the midfield, I think.
There it is.
That was it. So question will fan, do you think Ladzellam and Tooney wins us the WSL? Just interested to see what people's thoughts are. Now, obviously, this has been raised because there's a lot of talk, obviously, around the midfielders we had on the bench. I don't think any of them came on, or it might have been very late. Obviously, Borisa was on the bench. Lisa was on the bench again. We had another. Who was
Cascarino?
Cascarino. I knew there was one I was missing. Was also on the bench, but we didn't see them come on. Obviously, we've switched to a back three, which, to be fair, I thought worked. I actually thought we were better when we switched to a back three. I know people make jokes about, oh, you're losing, you brought a defender on. I actually thought we actually played better attacking football than we did. So that's a whole other debate. But on the midfield, I think this is where the criticism should be, if any, because I think you could have changed that. Tooney again was off it. I think Lad and Zellum weren't great either. The fact that we had so much of the ball.
Zellum lost the ball 18 times, which is a season high in the WSL.
That's what I mean. I think when you're doing that, I think then there's the discussion to be had that you can bring on a player like a Borisa or Nisa Larsland, who's going to play the ball forward more. Now, obviously, we don't know what the instructions are going to be from the bench. That he might, if he would have brought Borisa on, he could have said to it, "Go on, but do not, don't do it." Then whatever, we don't know. But what do we think on that one in terms of, obviously, that will be judged at the end of the season because we could win the league still, we could finish fourth. So we don't know. We'll have to reserve judgment fully on that until the end. But, I mean, Charlie, was there cry? Oh, well, there's always cries from the crowd. I'll ask this differently. Was there any kind of conversation about the midfield subs? Because that's the one area that we, obviously, Tooney did go off, but it was for a different type of attacker rather than maybe somebody in her position.
Yeah, it felt like there wasn't enough spark or creativity in midfield, and that might have been partly what led to Russo being so not isolated, but not being able to do much or not being able to have as much of an impact as she would have liked to have done. I think one thing that maybe does go unnoticed that Lad and Zellum perhaps did do is that they also won possession back a good number of times. So they broke up play really well. So as a defensive thing, they did a good job. But going forwards, there was little to nothing most of the time. And that was stifling. And I think, again, it's like, yes, if I was the manager of Man United, well, I'm not. I would love to be, but I'd be completely unqualified. I would look at it and think probably you would make a change there. I think we were talking about Cascarino, weren't we? And how exciting she looked when she came on and how bullish she was. And that she perhaps could have come on and offered something a little bit different. But it's not what happened. It's not what's happened. I do wonder if with the signings that we've made, particularly with Lisa being a long-term signing, is she 3.5 years with the option for a fourth or something like that? Which is very long in women's football, isn't it? That's like the contract we gave to Tooney. And if we were to keep Cascarino, you'd think they're potentially looking at some sort of change, longer-term change in midfield, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, Barry, for yourself, is there anything that you would have checked? Like I said, Tooney did come. Who did Tooney go off for? Was that the Thomas change?
Well, I've written this down because I always write these down. Tooney came off for Rachel Williams was the official.
That was it, and then Paris went inside, didn't she? Paris went kind of into the middle. Thomas went out on the right.
Next 10 or so.
I think, yeah. But yeah, Barry, for yourself, would you have, like I said, the three centre midfielders we've got?
The question was, do Lad, Tooney and Zellum win you a WSL? And the answer to that question is no, of course it's not. That's why you end up having more than 3 people. The idea that you're only going to have 3 midfielders for the entirety of a WSL season is ludicrous and a nonsense. And if you only have 3 midfielders, then you deserve everything that you get. Of course, you've got to have other people. Are they the best starting trio at the moment? Absolutely, they are. And they've proven that by the fact that they've put us into the position that we are in currently. Does that mean we've always got to stick with them? No, it doesn't, because players' form dips. Now, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks that, in my opinion, Vilda Risa has probably earned a start over Tooney. And I think, that's probably where Mark Skinner needs to be a bit braver now. I know that Tooney is contracted the longest and that she's shown a lot of desire and loyalty to the club, and that's superb. But you said it yourself. How many weeks now we've been saying she's not quite been at it? Not that she's been poor, she's just not been the Tooney that we know. I am unsure as to why that is. I could guess, but I'm not gonna. Certainly not on a public forum. But what I do think is that you've got to have options. And this is what I found hilarious. You said about Chelsea, well, we had this player missing and that player missing and that one's not there. But again, we're talking about Chelsea, who we know have got strength in depth. That's literally their calling card, is that they have players that can fit in to any position if somebody's missing. And that's what we needed to have. And that's what we've been getting. I think the problem is that the players that we brought on, it was still the system, wasn't it? Like you say, the last 10, 15 minutes was pretty good. But again, it still didn't really carve out any chances of note. And that's the main issue. So do I think that trio can win us the WSL? Absolutely, I do. But along with their replacements, which includes at this moment in time your Lisa, your Cascarino and your Barisa. And it's that ability to use them as and when they need to be used. And that's, just where he's got to be brave. It's never easy to turn around to Spelatoon and say, you're not going to start because Vilda's been performing a bit better than you. But maybe that's what she would need, is a kick up the backside to realise that, just having the name and the number doesn't guarantee you a start. Maybe.
No, I think that's the thing. I was going to ask you, Rob, from a Chelsea point of view in terms of what you made of, because you could never blame a loss on individuals because you need a team to lose.
Sure.
Like I said, players obviously made mistakes to score. Otherwise, I've always said players would never score if a team is absolutely inch perfect. But from a midfield point of view, were you a little bit surprised to see United not change that up? The fact that we weren't creating maybe clear-cut chances. I know you weren't either. But the fact that we were 1-0 down, it's getting to kind of 60, 70 minutes. I said we did. People can't say he didn't make changes because he did at 70 minutes, but it did seem to be very, although it was Thomas and Williams with goals and two, and it was very like for like in terms of the system didn't change. It's only when Mannion came on, when we went to the back three and Honor and Blundell went much higher, they basically turned it to wing backs then. Yeah. Were you a little bit surprised not to see like a Bo Risa or a Elisa Niles and does somebody coming off the bench just change up that midfielder?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, from a Chelsea point of view, we had Jessie Fleming, who's been poor this season, but I think had her best game she's had in a long, long, long time because she was played in her proposition. We had Ingle, who's had a very good season, had a real, renaissance. As I said, she was unlucky not to get the nod in that combined 11 the other day. And then we have Melanie Leupolz, who played 290 minutes, I think it is, since she's come back from sort of having a child. I was amazed you didn't try and overload the midfield and pack the area. But you just seem to be, and this was what also really surprised me, you seem to be really content to sit off us when we were playing out from the back. And you were letting Millie Bright and Buchanan pick the ball up and travel sort of 20, 30 yards and pick a pass. Last week against Arsenal, they were on us every time we tried to do that. And they were getting mistakes because we're not that good playing out from the back. Buchanan and Bright aren't the best passers of the ball. That's why we do miss Magda Eriksson. She is a better general passer of the ball. And also Jess Carter is a very good passer of the ball. But a lot of it, because you were sitting off, you were allowing people like Perisset also to pick it up. And Perisset's go-to pass is the ball sort of up and over behind the fullback and in down the wing. And even if it doesn't, come straight to the defender or go straight to the winger, it puts the defender and means they have to make a decision, and it stops them going forwards with their own ball. It means they have to go back towards their own goalkeeper. I I was really surprised that there wasn't a shape change. I said to you that, Ella Toon, I think this season, despite her numbers, I think she's been poor. I stand by this. I thought she was poor in the game. Again, didn't really look up for the physical battle with Sophie Ingle and Melanie Leupolz. I was really surprised Garcia didn't come on because I think her pace was something that really could have troubled us. In general, it just, from a tactical point of view, it felt like Emma Hayes got everything spot on and Mark Skinner didn't really know how to react. And Chelsea were happy to sit and let you have possession because the possession was going nowhere. And there was no real point in that game that I can say that I really felt under pressure for conceding. And that's me being completely honest. I don't think, there was a real period I felt, actually, we're really under the cosh here. But
I still feel it's 16. That's the number of goals we conceded in the last 4 games against Chelsea.
Yeah.
Something had to be done differently. We had to try and approach that game differently. So the way we've done it over the last 4 games, because we're just getting our backside handed.
I can agree to that argument, but then what I would say is you're 1-0 down at half time. You didn't really change anything, I think, until you went to that back 3 and you got the wing backs forward, and that was working. And that's exactly what Arsenal did to us last week that got things working for them in the Conti Cup final. They went to a back 3 and got wing backs forward and pushed players on. And we do struggle to play out against back 3, and that's why Emma went to a back 3 herself. But what I think, from a Chelsea point of view, what probably would concern, or from a United point of view, if I was a United fan, what would concern me is that as soon as Honor was shut down, there was no creativity in the team whatsoever. And I know people are going to say that Galton has been very good this season. I thought, she was anonymous. She may as well have not been on the pitch, and I was surprised she wasn't hooked sooner. I think Zellum being shut down by Fleming meant that you couldn't get passes through. And I don't think that, Toon and Russo, neither of them looked up for it. And that's what I think would concern me the most, is players, whether it's a mental block of coming to Kingsmeadow or a mental block of going 1-0 down against Chelsea or whatever, they just didn't look like they believed they could get back into it. Whereas in contrast, when you had that game at the end of last season, obviously Chelsea had a lot riding on that match. But as soon as they came out in that second half, you saw the way they just came out and the way they started that. And I think within about 30 seconds, I think it was Harder had a shot that gone wide. You just saw that the players were like, right, we can go on, we can do this, we can turn this around, we're better than this team.
I think that's the thing. I actually think that Chelsea, you did play differently to how you've played against us in previous meetings. The game at LSV was completely different to this one. Chelsea don't usually sit off us, in the way that you did. I was surprised, and that's why I thought we can go for it. That's why I'm a little bit more annoyed, because I'm like, we could have gone for that, because Chelsea were very happy to sit there and go and play different against us, whether that was obviously the players you've got missing. Obviously, you're missing one of the best playmakers in the league in Wrighton and Kirby and Hart and all these other players. It was almost like Emma Hayes knew, right, United are a very good side. I'm going to have to do something a little bit different just to contain them for a bit and obviously hit them on the break, which you did, obviously with Sam Kerr and in the goal. But other than that, I just felt like Chelsea was just like, well, we've got one. We can just shut up shop now. We know the long ball's going to work because it just worked every time. A couple of saves from Mary and Letitia made a great tackle. I can't remember who got through in the second half, but Letitia made a great tackle to deny another one.
It was
so Chelsea
again.
didn't need to do anything else because that ball over the top was on for Chelsea. They don't need to come out and dominate the ball because they know that they've got an outlet. Whereas for us, I never, ever felt like we could have played another 90, 120 minutes. We were never going to score because I never felt like we were ever... Like I said, we had a couple of corners. Galton's one corner that went all the way to the other side and nearly went out of play, on the far side. Zellum's free kick was poor, especially from her standards. She got a great free kick on her. I just never felt like we were ever going to... And that's when I looked to the coaching staff and like, let's change something. And to be fair, I would have brought Mannion on earlier and done that back 3 a lot sooner because I loved seeing Hannah and Honor actually having more freedom and further up. Like I said, I know people laugh at it. Oh, you're bringing a defender on, you're losing. At least he's trying something different. And I just wish that was maybe a little bit sooner because it's not like Chelsea were doing anything else. They weren't pressuring us. You could afford to go to that back 3 then.
I feel like this is where the fan base needs to take a little bit of a knock, if I'm honest with you, because Mark Skinner has been unfairly criticised for the vast majority of this season whilst guiding a team to the top of the league and performing incredibly well. And I wouldn't be surprised, and he shouldn't be. Just be very clear on that, regardless of what I'm about to say, he shouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised if he is a little bit affected and sitting there and wondering how he's how the decisions he makes are going to appear on him. If he makes that decision and we go on to lose 4-0, well, would you bring a defender on before you should have brought an attacker on? You know, if you get rid of a fullback and you change that, we shouldn't have any of those on. This shouldn't happen. It's like it's a ridiculous situation that we find ourselves in. Whatever that man does, there is a section of this fan base, which is a small fan base and shouldn't be like that will just have a go at him, no matter what he does. I've seen posts saying, I don't care if we win the league, he's still got to go. It's a madness, Connor. It's an absolute madness. And I do think there is an element of, it doesn't matter what he does, there is going to be a loud voice on Twitter that will consistently bring down what he does. And this is what I mean.
I actually agree with you. I think that's part of the reason why we played the way we did. I think I said this to Charlie I think I said it to both of you in one of our chats, that I think we went and played that way in fear of getting battered. And I genuinely I think from the last couple of meetings, everyone was saying, White's Mark set us out like this because, we're just getting battered and getting turned over. Look at the heavy score lines. And he's gone to this one, like you were saying earlier. And that's what's frustrating. He shouldn't be. I'd rather we'd have just gone there and played the game we've seen all season because, we're rightly top of the... I know, obviously, on games played, it's slightly different. But we were where we were. I didn't think there was any need to start changing things around just because of...
No. But I do think that it's rubbed off on the players as well because, again, they were hitting a point where it didn't matter what they did, it wasn't working. You stick a ball in there, it was being cleared. The penalties weren't given, like I say. And in the end of it, then after all that, you have a decent defence that's done a reasonable job. And then Sam Kerr goes and scores like she does there. And there is just that situation where surely these players will just sit there and think, well, here it goes, it's happening again. And it is a mental block. And how do you get over that mental block? We talk about mental health a lot around here. I'm not suggesting that they're unwell, but, once it happens and you go behind to Chelsea, it's not easy. It's not like going about, beating Arsenal where we did that. We had those chances. We had the opportunities. People say, why was Katie Zellum on until the last minute? Well, that's probably why. Because if Katie Zellum hadn't been on the pitch against Arsenal, we'd have lost that game. Simple as that, because her free kick delivery is so good. So, I just think we've had a lot of conversation here today. And I just think that the overriding thing needs to be that it's not the end of the world. We've lost to Chelsea. This has happened literally every single time we've played them. Nothing's changed. The only difference is that for the first time in about 3 years, it's been a 1-goal difference.
No, I tend to agree with that. Like I said, there's no need. I said this right at the start. There's no need for an overreaction. I think I'm just deflated from it because I just felt like we should have won. But I think, Charlie, throwing it over to you, something Barry just mentioned there, and it was something I put on the tweet, talking about big game players, Kerr doing what she does. Is that maybe something that United are lacking a little bit? Now, we've obviously had players that have done it in European competitions. We saw it with the Lionesses. Are United maybe missing that type of player that can win these title deciding? I know we've got games to go, but what was built up to be this type of game, just to win it like that, in terms of a small moment like that? Because like we've said throughout this whole show, there was limited chances for either side. The difference is Chelsea have got a player like Sam Kerr that can score one of those chances. Is that maybe the difference, or do you just think the quality of chance was maybe better for Kerr to score as well?
I think that's part of it. I mean, if we don't just look at this game in isolation, like you think back to last season, like that the goal Kerr, we talked about, the Kerr scored that sort of changed the whole landscape of the title running. Like you look at Bunny Shaw against Brighton, that looked like it was going to be a 1-1, and then Bunny comes up clutch once again. But yeah, I do think we're missing another striker. That I say all the time, we haven't got anyone that is prolific. We haven't, and whether we can create more clear-cut opportunities for Russo to help her become that, I don't know. But at the moment, we don't have a prolific striker. Now, part of that will be down to chance creation, perhaps. Part of that might be down to how clinical we are, because we see games where we have 30 shots, like Everton, we had 25, 26 shots and we didn't score. And you can't argue that that's a tactical issue. But I think we need to be looking for that 15-plus goal a season striker. Lanzell. Jinx. Lanzell's my burner account.
I was going to say, Lanzo, we have just answered your question. If you've just come back into the chat, we did just go through your question just a second ago. So make sure you rewatch this.
Right, Mike, sorry. Mike, can you just pop Mike Lyle's comment up? I think it was Tim Stillman who was talking about this. I really like Tim Stillman. Brilliant podcast, by the way, if anyone's interested. It's really good chat about women's football. He's saying the supply isn't there in women's football to meet the demand at which teams want top quality strikers. There aren't enough to go round at the moment, and that is just a fact. There isn't. And that's part of the difficulty. And that again is, even if Russo isn't yet at the level of a Kerr or a Bunny Shaw, if she were to go, it would be incredibly difficult to replace her.
I think I made the point on one of Barry's, just very quickly, sorry, Barry. I think I made the point on one of Barry's fans' forums a few weeks ago, where he said it'll be Champions League ready. When you're talking about, you know, the quality in Europe, those strikers in Europe are not leaving to come to a yet non-Champions League side. We've got to get there first to get those kind of players. And I agree with you, Charles. The demand isn't there. You know, we're not going to go to Lyon or PSG or Bayern or Wolfsburg and take their top striker, because they're not going to come to us because we're not in Champions League. Yeah, they're not going to downgrade at the point in their career. So, yeah, I fully agree on that point.
I was just going to say that again, we're having this conversation, and again, it's just little things. They tickle me. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. We're talking about not having a 15-goal a season striker, but yet we're sat here before the game yesterday with 38 goals scored, which is top of the WSL, alongside Chelsea. So even though Chelsea have got this striker that's going to score a bit more, background change there for Rob, lovely. It's like the Oscars. You know, we've got all of those things going on, but we're still within the top there. So I think really what it all comes down to, and this will please Lanzel, is that the signing we need, of course, is Maz Pacheco. That's the one, isn't it?
Do you know what? I would love that sign still, but that's not going to happen. I did ask around. I did some asking. That's not on the cards, unfortunately, from my point of view. But there we are. I mean, maybe just coming off the back of an ACL, but again, we've got to get Champions League.
I will say,
I would vomit with excitement. We'll
in terms of Katoto, just from what I know, don't get excited.
No, I won't.
Don't get excited on where she's off. Someone did say there, and I said this to you in January, the best signing you could have gone out and done is get Beth England.
Yeah, I thought
Beth England, proven goal scorer, winning mentality, top number 9. She only left us because Sam Kerr came in, and because the fact that Sam Kerr is Sam Kerr. You don't necessarily need a Sam Kerr. You need someone like Beth England that would get you 15 plus goals.
Rob, you've done an hour and 20 minutes before I had to sit there and go, no, he's fucking tripe.
I mean, you know, there's other options around Europe. You could potentially look at Lyon are going to reshuffle their attack again in the summer, and you've already had, you know, their centre forward on loan once. I know she's available in the summer. Martina Piemonte at AC Milan having a good season this year, and, you know, out of contract in the summer. I think this is it. It's about being smarter and, you know, looking for those smart signings. Someone said,
this is off the back of what Barry was saying earlier about the.
Since United do have a good goals player, exactly that, right? So we've been sharing the goals out this year, which is great because you do want that. But also, we've got Leslie Russo, and I know that people are saying this, but like Rachel Daly's on 11. Bunny Shaw's on 15. She's just having a madness this year. Something's gone on there. She's, you know, Bunny
Shaw's world class and is actually finally playing games. That's what's happened there. They've actually finally realised she's world class.
So now she's playing. She's getting the goals. Rachel Daly on 11. Can we just point out that we've just sat here and said how good Sam Kerr is, but Leslie scored more goals than Sam so far in the WSL. So, you know, we're talking about these 15-goal-a-season strikers in the WSL, but we're there. You know, we're there and thereabouts. Leah Galton's there with 6. We've got 14 in 2 of them. And to be honest with you, if we could just get that right-sided attacker getting a few more in as well, you know, it'd be even better. You want to spare them out a bit, because otherwise, same thing has happened to Spurs. They bring in a Beth England, she gets injured, and before you know it, Skinner's sacked. And we don't want that to happen over here, do you?
Well, we've had a Skinner sack today.
My point exactly. Do you think we like these gags for a giggle, Connor?
Do you know? I was actually going to open the show with "Hello, welcome to All for United. Skinner has been sacked," and just go with that. But I thought, no, I couldn't think of a good follow-up to that.
The bait, the absolute bait.
Yeah, I could.
I was going to ask you why we weren't talking about Skinner being sacked, but there you go.
I don't agree. Ultimately, time will because we're not at the end of the season yet, so we don't know whether we've got a 15-goal a season WSL goal striker, because we haven't played all the games yet. Do I think Russo will get there? No, I think she might be a couple off on her current form. But I mean, Rob, I'm pretty sure Kerr's, just very, very quickly, pretty sure Kerr's got the record, right, for the number of goals. Is Bunny Shaw going to...
She jointly shares it with Viviana Miedema.
Is Bunny Shaw going to beat that? She's, 7 away, 7 to
honestly,
equal, 8 to break?
It wouldn't surprise me. Like I said this last year, I spent, every time I went on MCFCW Extra, I spent all season saying, I'm not sure why Bunny Shaw's not playing. She's world class, play her more. And I said at the beginning of the season when we did that show and we said it's the Golden Boot Sam's to beat, I specifically said in that one, you wouldn't count out Sam Kerr, but at the same time, I think Bunny Shaw will have a really good year. And, thank you, Bunny Shaw, for proving that, I do know my onions. What I will say is interesting, and I think this is the one, is that again, I may be wrong here. Did Russo score against Arsenal?
Yes, she scored the winner.
Okay, did she score against City?
Who scored it? It was Goldson, wasn't it, against City? I think.
Okay.
I scored against City.
Because I was going to say, I don't think Russo at the moment does enough in those big games, and that's where I think Kerr. That's why I put Kerr above Russo in the combined 11. I said as soon as it's a big game, Sam Kerr just enters another plane. And it wasn't just the goal she scored; it was the fact that all game long she just bullied your defence. And realistically, she shouldn't have won anywhere near the number of headers that she won. She shouldn't have been able to break the line as much as she did. And it got to a point in the second half, and this was what was a bit too easy, is that Chelsea were able to play up to the halfway line, and Sam Kerr was able to bring it down because players were standing off of her because they didn't want to lose the aerial battle and let her win the flick on and play in Joanna Rettin-Cannerud. And that's where I think, Kerr... And I think Russo will get there. Like I've said before, I think Russo's a phenomenal young forward. But I think at the moment she needs someone else there to take the pressure off her as well. And I think that's where Chelsea, they've been a bit unlucky with injuries in the fact that with Kerr injured, if you had Harder fully fit and Kirby fully fit, you could put them up there and they're still world-class players to go up there. United, if Russo gets injured, I don't think you've got a similar style of player to Russo that can go in there with no disrespect to Rachel. Wasn't it Ella Toon who scored against LSV?
No, it was that Russo scored at LSV.
But even still, I don't think that's a comparable situation because that's a 2-0, down as opposed to being the key goal to open a game or decide a match.
Could have been a key goal if we stopped giving it away. But anyway, as we talk about signing strikers, I think the most important signing that I want to find out about today is, Charlie, did you get any cucumbers?
I got 2 cucumbers. You were
Cucumbers.
Huge moves.
Nearly bought 4, but I thought I don't want to be that person.
No.
Some little old lady somewhere cucumberless.
Facts.
Don't be rude. Don't be rude.
I was actually going to shout out Rob Kenton because Rob Kenton tweeted this saying that, can you imagine if Carla Ward went to Spurs? And now she's actually officially linked. So I'm putting that down to Rob Kenton.
The most surprising thing in the world.
I'm all up for that.
I'm fair play to her if she does. But yeah, Rob, if you're watching this, you started that as just a little joke, and now all of a sudden it's a full-on.
Jokes on you, Carla. Rob Kenton is actually Carla Ward's agent.
That would be something. He is quite a quiet guy, and he only pipes up in the group chats when he's roasting somebody every so often. So, there we are.
It's easy, dirty dancing.
Let's come to the player of the match poll, and let's see who actually won that in the end.
I'm disappointed how few people voted today, bearing in mind how many people we had watching. But I get the feeling there's some people that disagree with us.
I was going to say, John Fry put in the comment. I'll give you all about 90 more seconds to vote. But John Fry, you put in the comments earlier on that you can't vote because the player's not on there. Who would you have gone for if not?
Right, you've asked that. We've obviously missed the one where he said he's got to duck out, so he can't answer that question.
Is he? Oh, okay, I missed that one. Oh, I can see the comment now.
Okay. He's screaming into the void.
Fair enough. Right, well, I'm going to end the poll now anyway. So, I can't see it. Where is it going? There we go. So, Letitia with 5%, Honor with 25, Paris with 30, and Mary Earps with 38. So, Mary Earps won this week. I mean, interesting. We lost the game 1-0. Mary Earps gets player of the match, as voted for by the viewers. Do we agree, disagree with that one?
I voted for Mary. I voted for because I think she was the only one who did something positive, like majorly positive, had a real moment that impacted the game, and it was the 1v1. Was it on about 12 minutes, Rob, when Kerr was through?
Yeah.
And she just stood her ground. And I thought that was the most impactful thing that one of our players did in that game.
Barry, do you agree with that one? Would you have gone for Mary or?
I can fully see why people would go for Mary up. She did make some great saves. I personally voted for Nikita Parrish. I think she was quite good going forward when she had her opportunities. She did work back. I think she just works hard, you know, and I think this was a game where you had to celebrate effort.
Do you know what, Bazza? She did an absolute wicked tackle on Jess Carter. I actually remember that now. That's reminding me where she ran. She absolutely gassed it back and clattered her. But
that was the one where Jess Carter got a nosebleed being that far forward. She's not used to that. Yeah.
That's nice because Onabache got a nosebleed from being smashed down into the penalty box.
You're not bitter at all, are you?
Only at the ref. I
will say I'm surprised that Ladd doesn't feature higher in the poll because I thought she was the only player that looked up for the fight. But that also might just be my bias towards defensive midfielders in general. There's one fun stat actually. So a fun game for you all. So between Walty, Ingle, Castellanos, and Ladd, how many fouls on average do you think they commit in a WSL game?
In a game?
Oh, little niggly one.
On average, on the total number between them on average.
Well, Volsey probably can see. I can imagine gives away
all four of them added together.
Yeah. So all four of them averaged out between them.
Oh, averaged.
So the mean number of fouls.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like 5 a game.
6.7.
100.
I mean, not quite. It's what was your guess, Charlie?
Between 6 and 7 each.
Yeah, and Connor?
That's, I don't know, 4 or 5. It can't be that many. She'd be booked after 2 or 3.
It's the WSL.
7.2 in the WSL.
What?
How many combined yellow cards do they have this season?
How do you do that many fouls in a game and not get booked?
How many combined yellow cards do you think they have this season?
Between them, 3.
Lads had one. Lads had one.
Yeah, Lads had one, definitely. I'm going to say 3.
Well, now you said that, it should be about.
Yeah. No. I'll come on to the next stat after. So you've got between them. They've got 6 in the WSL. They've got 6 in total between them in the WSL. Between all the players.
So 7 fouls a game and only 6 yellow cards between them.
Yeah, across the season. Lauren James, Katie McCabe, Leah Galton, and Chloe Kelly. How many fouls on average do you think they can see the game?
McCabe bumps the figures up a little bit.
Yeah, McCabe does bump the figure up a little bit, but how many fouls on average do you think?
4.
Altogether,
this is going to be more because I think McCabe
8
bumps
or
it up.
9. So I'm going to go 40 as a whole. So
okay,
an average per game. I don't know, 7 or 8. If
you'd be surprised, 2.7 is the total. What? How many yellow cards do they have between the season in the WSL?
15.
Don't infuriate me here. How many? It'd be the same number, isn't it?
I can't just have a guess on between them.
How many was the last one? 6 yellows.
Shane's got the same as me.
7.
Yeah, I'm going to say 7 or 8.
Barry?
15.
They have 11 between them. So the wingers of the WSL have collected more yellow cards this season through less average fouls than the defensive midfielders of the WSL.
That's ridiculous.
That's one of my favourite stats.
Especially with McCabe's record.
Well, that was it. Well, I was amazed that McCabe was, I was surprised the mean was that low. But then when you look at it, Lauren James, on average, she gets booked every 1.5 tackles 1.5 fouls she makes. So she must, referees must really hate her. Galton's
that's a bit like Saka, isn't it? It sounds a bit like Saka.
Precisely, yeah. And it's one of those bizarre stats that came out today. But I thought it was, considering we all love referees here, and we all think that they're the paradigms of
Can I ask you a question? Do you think there is something in? So those players. So you just said McCabe, Galton, James, and who was the other? Kelly. So all quite big players.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
100%. Imposing. Do you think
I know what you're going to say. Yeah, 100%.
There's something in that, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%.
You're big, so therefore you get more. You get more bookings, please.
Yeah, 100%. And I've said it's because the thing is, because they are generally quite larger sort of frames, when they do commit fouls, they look more clumsy, and so they give it. Whereas when Ingle, Walty, Ladd, and Castellanos just pull someone back, they just smile sweetly at the referee, and the referee's like, "Yeah, go on, then." And that's probably the absolute cardinal sin. Like every game, you will see at some point the defensive midfielder will just blatantly just rip someone's shirt off. They're like, "Yeah, it's fine, just get on with it." And that's what it's such a clear yellow card.
I think it would be the same as if we were at the football, Charlie. If we were having a bit of beef and I pushed you, everyone would be like, "Oh, he's fat and he's a bloke. That's outrageous. That's terrible." So I'd be in trouble and ejected, even though you could absolutely kick my backside.
I was about to say, to be fair, if Charlie pushed you, we'd be buying her a pint next time I saw her.
I'll be straight over, like the game over for me. No dramas. And you talk about me being bitter about referees. It wasn't a good day yesterday because we had those 2 issues at Kingsmeadow. I don't even want to talk about what happened at Old Trafford. And then we had a game, like I say, at Stevenage. I was doing a bit of recording. And there was one where the coaches shouted for handball, and he's like, "No, that never touched her hand." And the recording that I've got ends on the handball, and her hands are out like this, and the ball's on her arm. And I'm just like, well, it's just not a good day today. So it's not just in the women's game; it's everywhere, and the officials need to be sorted. That's my moan for the day.
100%. Yeah. For the player of the match poll, I actually agree with Barry. I'd have gone for Paris as well. I thought she worked hard down that right hand side. I thought she was decent going forward. Like I said, none of our forwards had a good game, but I thought she was the best out of all of them. I thought she offered the most, and defensively, she tracked back really well.
Did you vote for her, Connor?
I did actually, yes.
Good. Well,
she definitely. To be fair, I will give her credit that she took. Again, the Chelsea fans gave her a lot of stick in the game. I will give her credit that after she was subbed off, she was getting stick and she turned and sarcastically clapped the fans and subsequently proceeded to get a standing ovation from the rest of Kingsmeadow. If you're going to give players stick, and this is like the Chilwell on Saturday when the Leicester fans were annoyed he celebrated in front of them after they'd spent 20 minutes calling them money grabbing so and so. If you're going to give players stick, you should expect them to react like that. And Lauren James has done it a couple of times this season to Arsenal fans. Obviously, she kissed the badge at LSU. You expect players to do it. If you're going to poke with a bear, you have to expect them to react.
I still don't think she kissed the badge. I think she was spit shining it.
Whatever makes you happy, Barrow.
We'll go with that. Right, we'll look to wrap it up there. 90 minutes, another 90 minutes.
Well, I'll tell you what, more's happened in this thing than it did yesterday. That's for sure.
Obviously, there was no men's channel show yesterday, so that'll be back tomorrow. Obviously, we've got Real Betis on Thursday, so I'm sure we'll talk about that. We'll be talking about what do we do with the midfield now, because Casemiro is out again for another 4 games. So obviously, we've got that whole dilemma. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow night. 8 o'clock, I think, or 8:30. Be one of the two. Keep it on the Twitter for that. Obviously, WFC channel will be back on Wednesday. Barry will be back with a load more fans to talk about. Well, obviously, we'll probably talk more about the Chelsea game and get some other people's thoughts and some other things as well. I'm sure. No, Chris, not tonight, Chris. Unfortunately.
Can we just check Rob's opinion on something?
Oh no, you're not going to ask him this question, are you?
Do you like our cuddly Connor?
Superb, to be honest. I think the hair's spitting image actually.
See?
Big fan.
I was waiting for you, Barry. When I was going back and forth with Graham yesterday, talking about the Elvis film, I was fully expecting you to come in with a picture of that bear.
To be honest, it's worse. If Connor needs to miss one of the shows, just stick him up there and no one will notice. To be honest.
Yeah, exactly that.
And the bear probably recognises as many film references as you, Connor. So.
I've seen some great films. I don't need to see all of them.
You've seen about 5, Connor. One of them was He-Man and She-Ra, Peppa Pig, Teletubbies, and Spice World.
Sam, come on, man.
Way! I love you, Sam.
I can't
That's the
believe
red
this.
card.
And no, Chris, you'll get that on a more on a different type of show, I'm sure. It gets brought up all the time. I don't want to be roasted again for that. Yes, it was good to have you on, Rob. Like I said, the first time we've had an opposition fan on to talk about the game. So yeah, obviously, thanks for joining us. Do you want to shout your stuff out? I know you were on last Thursday, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm
anything
still at the exact same place. If you want to tell RJP Journal, if you want to continue to tell me that my, combined 11 is awful, I will shout out the person that actually, I think 24 hours after it came out, DM'd me to tell me that they disagreed with my selection because they would have put Wrighton in, despite the fact Wrighton was already in the team. So that was quite an experience. And then also I'm going to also plug the Atta F-ball again, because I'm now writing the newsletters. So this week you get to see what exciting pun I come up with about the weekend's match. So look forward to that.
Definitely go and check that out. We got some good feedback on the Combined 11 show. Some people didn't agree with certain positions, which was fine. Some people had some outrageous claims. Let's leave it at that. I think some players. But, as we can be biased, but we can also be fair and rational to talk about it, like we have done for the last hour and 40 minutes.
As you saying that, Connor, I'm going to throw that at you then. Now, because I've got you to change your mind almost, but would you now stick with Lad over Zellum? We watch the game.
I don't think off the back of that performance is a good time to ask. I'd stick with Lad off the back of that. I thought Lad was the better out of the two of them after this weekend.
Fair weather fan. Fair weather fan.
Ask me in a few weeks. In fact, we'll do it at the end of the season. Do you remember how long the 2022 one took?
Oh Jesus, no, not that.
Was that when you were all messing about? Was that when you were all messing about trying to pretend that different players were left backs and you just needed to put Katie McCabe in? Is that one?
I couldn't possibly comment.
Barry didn't like the three per team rule.
It was the one where I basically picked the correct team and then kind of just butchered it.
Just wait till we announce the curveball this year is that you're only allowed 5 right footers and 5 left footers.
Jeez. Honestly, there's more curves on Connor's questions than there are on his quiff. There's a nice alliteration for you, huh?
Oh, dear me. So we will do one of those, obviously, towards the end of the season, I'm sure. Obviously, we got the pre. If just very quickly before we wrap up, Rob, you said it earlier. You said Lewis, not Lewis. You're obviously from down that. Well, you're closer down south than most of us.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably pronounced like that. So yeah, probably.
See, probably pronounced. It's Lewis.
You will learn with most southern things. However, if you pronounce it incorrectly, they will just assume you're from the north anyway, and just give you a free pass as a result of that. So don't worry. Either way they'll think you're wrong.
So we'll be doing that on Friday anyway. We'll be doing the preview obviously for that game. Right, thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks for all your comments. You've been absolutely fantastic. Like I said, we're back on this channel on Wednesday. Make sure you're liking the video and subscribe it. And we shall see you guys very soon.